Hi. In this section of the lecture, I'm going to start looking at the way that we move into an area called spatial computing. I think first you have to look at how we view the world around us. And in the early days, it was paper as a 2D system, flat, boring, no link, no nothing. And then we started to move into the 3D world, and we started working on a flat screen, but with a 3D model embedded into that. And we started adding information to that. And that is where BIM was born. And BIM has been key to understanding how we could move forward. And the relevant standards have shown a route or tried to explain a route that we could use. And to the most part, it works. But this slide is not about BIM. This is the next phase on. This is the idea that we can move into something called spatial computing. And spatial computing is where we are immersed into that space. With BIM, we are limited to the view that we are given, the way it's displayed on a flat screen. And if we're lucky, we could start to look at that into a spatial computing system. But it hasn't got there yet. So when we start to look at the real world of spatial computing, we have to imagine how things might be. We've seen tantalizing glimpses of the way that we can expect it to look like. We can see that Google Glass has opened up the idea of putting a small picture, not as a picture we look at, but something that's beamed directly to our eyeball. And that is exciting. Link that concept onto the way that we can start to have almost immediate data and a changing visual experience as we walk down a road or into a building. And that is spatial awareness, spatial computing, where we live in that world as an augmented and virtual reality, where the two, we look at something and we see an overlay, we see information coming in that tells us what the building is, what the floor is, what the materials are, who the people around us are, a whole heap of stuff. And spatial computing allows us to have this dynamic interchange of the data, because not only are buildings around us telling us what they are and who they are, but your personal information package, your address book, the information that you've kept will suddenly pick up and say, here's some information about that building. You made it 2 years ago. Or here's some pictures that relate to that building as it was before all the alterations were done. And so spatial computing lifts us away from that concept of a flat 2D world and the concept of a 3D world where you're looking at it, but still got some data, to the world of spatial computing, where we live in that spatial world, where we see and feel all the information that is available. And that is exciting. It's currently limited simply because the computing power and the visual power is not there yet. I think that the mobiles that we use now certainly have got the bulk of the power we require. But we've got to sort out this idea of how we see it. So Google in their maps shows you the information that we want, but I've got to hold it there in front of my eyes. I've got to take my mobile and look at it like this. And I keep on looking up to see the information. Does it relate to where I am? There is a form of latency that is often annoying because it needs to pick up. And the current 4G system can't cope with that. But 5G is going to be the answer and above. where the latency is almost not detectable by us. And we will be wearing some form of glass that allows us to not only see the world as we want to, but I can just do this. And all of a sudden, the information that I require comes up onto my eyeball, and I can read it and see it and overlay it. I could enter into that world as a virtual world, or I can augment it onto the world as I see it. In other words, the information just flows, and I can then look at it. Thank you very much. Switch it off, walk on. So this whole concept of spatial awareness, spatial computing, is the next big level leap up. And we need to watch this area, because it's not only going to change the way that we draw in CAD, but it'll also change the way the relationship between the information that we hold and the information that is allowed to be accessed by the world around us. And that means sensors. Sensors are going to be the key to understanding a whole heap of stuff. And that's why I'm starting to look into how we control that sensor data. Do I really require somebody to do this for me? Well, the top end of it, yes. But at the bottom end of that data package, I'm starting to look at Python and the way that I can collect information from various sources and feed them to me, well, to my eyeball and to my ears in a way that I want, that I can trust. So spatial computing is not just the hardware. It is some case the way that the traffic is moved around. So 5G, 6G, whatever G comes next is going to be key. But the big question is, how much data can we generate to allow the system to really work? And the answer to that is sensors are going to create a vast amount of information. Some of it will be private. Some of it will be bought or be available to purchase. And some of it will be our own making. In other words, the sensors that you have on your home or your body will record and save your information, ready for you to use again, in comparison or with other systems like Google Glass, like Google Maps, into a 3D augmented spatial world. And that is really exciting.